You believe yourself generous when you scatter your time like loose coins to every outstretched hand, yet wonder why the world treats you as a beggar rather than a benefactor. Machiavelli understood what the gentle soul refuses to accept. That respect is not the reward for kindness, but the tribute paid to those who master the delicate art of measured benevolence. The prince who gives everything gains nothing, for men despise what comes too easily and venerate only what requires effort to obtain. You have been taught that niceness is virtue, that acquiescence is nobility, that self-erasure is love, and these beautiful lies have cost you the very dignity you sought to preserve through their practice. Consider the tragedy unfolding in your daily existence, invisible to you yet apparent to all who observe your diminishment. Each time you silence your truth to keep false peace. Each moment you dissolve your boundaries to accommodate the insatiable. Each instance you apologize for occupying the space you were born to fill. You do not build bridges of connection, but monuments to your own inconsequence. The world does not reward this supposed virtue with the respect you crave. Instead, it offers you the particular contempt reserved for those who advertise their own expendability. Machiavelli witnessed this pattern repeated endlessly in the courts of power. The advisor who agreed with everything was dismissed, while the one who dared to challenge was consulted. The fortress that opened its gates to every traveler soon found itself overrun, while the one that demanded proper credentials stood unconquered through generations. What you call kindness is often cowardice wearing a halo, conflict avoidance dressed in the robes of compassion, the authentic respect you hunger for, the kind that transforms relationships, opens doors, and commands genuine influence, flows not to the perpetually accommodating, but to those who understand that true strength reveals itself in strategic restraint, in the calculated no, in the boundary that protects rather than the openness that invites exploitation. You fear that asserting yourself will make you cruel, that protecting your interests will render you selfish, that valuing your own time will brand you arrogant. Yet Machiavelli teaches us that these fears themselves are the prison, and the bars are made of nothing more substantial than the opinions of those who benefit from your compliance. The patterns you are about to discover are not abstract theories requiring interpretation. They are concrete behaviors you likely enacted today, perhaps within the last hour, possibly even as you prepared to absorb this message. These are the subtle surrenders that masquerade as virtues, the small deaths of self-respect that accumulate until you no longer recognize the diminished reflection staring back from the mirror of your relationships. You will feel the discomfort of recognition as each behavior is illuminated. For seeing clearly what we have hidden from ourselves always carries the sharp sting of truth. But this discomfort is not your enemy. It is the signal that transformation has begun, that the comfortable numbness of self-deception is finally giving way to the awakening that precedes all genuine change. 9 behaviors stand between you and the respect that should be yours by right of your inherent worth. 9 patterns that you were taught to believe made you good, noble, selfless. 9 habits that actually broadcast to the world that you may be used without consequence, disappointed without apology, dismissed without second thought. Machiavelli would tell you that fortune favors not the meek who wait for recognition, but those who seize respect through the simple act of respecting themselves first. The prince who cannot command his own court will never rule a kingdom, and you who cannot establish sovereignty over your own boundaries will forever find yourself subject to the whims of those less capable but more certain. What follows is not merely information, it is the blueprint for your liberation from the tyranny of misplaced niceness, the map that guides you from the wilderness of people-pleasing to the solid ground of authentic self-regard. The first behavior that sabotages your claim to respect is the reflexive apology, that automatic utterance of sorry for crimes you did not commit and spaces you have every right to occupy. Machiavelli observed that the prince who constantly apologizes for his decisions soon finds that no decision carries weight, for authority dissolves in the acid of perpetual self-doubt made public. Yet you apologize for asking questions, for existing in proximity to others, for having needs that dare to surface in the presence of those whose needs you have been conditioned to prioritize. This is not politeness. It is the announcement of your own inconsequence, a daily advertisement that your presence is presumed to be an imposition rather than a contribution. When you apologize for things beyond your control, or for simply taking up the space that belongs to you, you train the world to view you through the lens of your own diminishment. The colleague who never apologizes unnecessarily is presumed competent. You who apologize for everything are presumed uncertain, and uncertainty is the opposite of respect. Machiavelli understood that perception shapes reality in human affairs. The leader who acts as though he deserves his position will find that others treat him accordingly, while the one who constantly questions his right to lead will discover his followers doing the same. Your apologies are not kindness. They are invitations for others to question whether you should be taken seriously, whether your time matters, whether your contributions carry value. Consider how this pattern operates in your relationships, both personal and professional. When you apologize for having an opinion that differs from consensus, you do not preserve harmony. You teach others that your perspective can be dismissed without consideration. When you apologize for enforcing a reasonable boundary, you communicate that the boundary itself is negotiable, subject to revocation if challenged with sufficient persistence. The respect you seek requires that you occupy your ground with the quiet confidence of one who knows his worth, is not dependent on unanimous approval. Machiavelli would counsel that the fortress of self-respect must have walls, and those walls are built from the simple refusal to apologize for existing with needs, preferences, and limitations like every other human being. The strategic correction is not to become callous or inconsiderate, but to reserve apology for those moments when you have genuinely caused harm through action or neglect. This discrimination between appropriate and reflexive apology restores power to the word itself and dignity to your interactions. When you apologize only for actual wrongs, your apology carries the weight of sincerity rather than the worthlessness of habit. Others learn that when you say, "I apologize," something significant has occurred, not merely that you have entered a room or expressed a thought. This recalibration alone will shift how you are perceived, for people unconsciously grant more respect to those who behave as though they deserve it, and nothing signals deservingness like the refusal to apologize for your basic humanity. The second behavior that undermines respect is the compulsion to over-explain every decision, as though your choices require a jury's approval before implementation. Machiavelli noted that the prince who justifies every action appears weak, for strength needs no defense, and confidence requires no validation from those it governs. Yet you find yourself constructing elaborate explanations for the simplest boundaries, as if your no is an offense requiring mitigation through detailed reasoning. This over-explanation does not make you appear considerate, it makes you appear uncertain, as though you yourself question the legitimacy of your own preferences and are seeking external permission to honor them. When someone asks for your time, your resources, or your energy, and you respond with a lengthy justification for declining, you inadvertently communicate that your refusal is subject to appeal. You open a negotiation that should have been closed with a simple, respectful boundary. The person who hears your elaborate explanation does not think how thoughtful and considerate, but rather, there are many points in this explanation I could challenge to change this outcome. Machiavelli understood that in the realm of power and influence, ambiguity invites manipulation, while clarity commands respect. Your over-explanations are ambiguity disguised as transparency, creating opportunities for others to argue you out of your own boundaries. This pattern reveals a deeper truth about how you relate to your own authority. When you trust your decisions, brief communication suffices because you are not seeking approval. You are simply informing others of a reality. When you distrust your decisions, you bury them in justification because part of you hopes the other person will either validate your choice or provide a reason to reverse it. This is the abdication of self-governance, the outsourcing of your sovereignty to whoever happens to be making a request. The respect you crave cannot coexist with this perpetual referendum on your right to have preferences, limits, and priorities that others may find inconvenient. The correction lies in cultivating comfort with brief, kind, but final communication. "I'm not available that day" requires no enumeration of conflicting commitments. "That doesn't work for me" needs no supporting evidence of why it fails to work. "I've decided to decline" stands complete without a list of decision-making criteria. Machiavelli would remind you that those who respect themselves require less explanation, for they operate from the assumption that their choices are valid by virtue of being their choices. When you adopt this posture, not with arrogance but with quiet self-assurance, you will notice a remarkable shift. People stop arguing with your boundaries and start accepting them, because you have stopped inviting negotiation through the weakness of over-justification. The third behavior destroying your respect is the habit of consistently prioritizing others' comfort over your own truth. Machiavelli observed that those who tell men what they wish to hear gain temporary favor but lasting contempt, while those who speak difficult truths earn initial resistance but eventual respect. Yet you have become a master of the comfortable lie, the reassuring nod, the agreement you do not feel, all in service of avoiding the momentary discomfort of honest disagreement. This is not kindness. It is the cowardice that disguises itself as consideration, the self-betrayal that masquerades as empathy. Each time you smile and nod while internally disagreeing, you commit a small violence against your own integrity that others sense even if they cannot name it. Human beings possess remarkable sensitivity to inauthenticity. They may not consciously recognize your dishonesty, but they register it as a vague unease, a sense that you cannot quite be trusted because you do not quite trust yourself. The person who always agrees is the person nobody truly believes, for agreement without the possibility of disagreement is meaningless. Machiavelli understood that the advisor who never challenges is the advisor who is never truly consulted when decisions of consequence are made. He is kept for comfort, not counsel, and comfort is not the foundation of respect. Consider the cumulative cost of this pattern across your relationships. By hiding your authentic reactions to preserve others' comfort, you prevent genuine connection. For connection requires that people know who you actually are, rather than the carefully curated version you present to avoid conflict. You become a mirror, reflecting back what others wish to see. And while mirrors are useful, they are not respected. They are merely functional objects that serve the viewer's needs. The respect you hunger for cannot flow to a reflection. It can only flow to a real person with real opinions, real boundaries, and real willingness to risk disapproval in service of authenticity. The strategic shift requires that you begin telling smaller truths in lower-stakes situations, building your tolerance for the discomfort of honest disagreement. When someone asks your opinion on a matter of no great consequence, practice offering your actual thought rather than the agreeable response. When a preference is solicited, state yours, even if it differs from the group consensus. Machiavelli would counsel that courage is a muscle strengthened through use, and the courage to be truthful begins with small acts of authenticity that gradually expand your capacity for honest self-expression. Those who can weather your authentic opinions are the ones worthy of your genuine connection. Those who cannot were never offering you respect in the first place, only the conditional approval granted to those who make no demands and cause no disruption. The fourth behavior that guarantees your disrespect is the compulsion to fill every silence with your own sacrifice. Machiavelli recognized that the prince who is always available becomes invisible, while the one whose time must be earned commands attention and gratitude. Yet you rush to volunteer before anyone has asked, offer help before need has been expressed, sacrifice your priorities at the mere possibility that someone might benefit from your self-abandonment. This is not generosity. It is the desperate bid for significance from one who has not yet learned that value is demonstrated through selective availability, not constant accessibility. When you make yourself perpetually available, you eliminate the opportunity for others to miss you, to recognize your contribution through its absence, to value your presence because they have experienced the cost of your unavailability. You become like air, essential but unnoticed, taken for granted precisely because you are always there. Machiavelli observed that men value most what they must work to obtain and devalue what comes without effort. Your constant availability is effort-free for others, and therefore worthless in the economy of respect. The colleague who must be specifically requested shows up in memory and gratitude. You who are always present blend into the background of expectation. This pattern reveals your deeper belief that your worth must be earned through utility, that love and respect are commodities purchased through the currency of self-sacrifice. But this is the arithmetic of the servant, not the sovereign. Those who respect themselves understand that their presence is the gift, not the endless acts of service they perform. Their time has value because they have decided it has value. And this decision is communicated through the simple act of protecting it, of saying no to good things in order to preserve capacity for great things, of allowing others to solve their own problems, rather than rushing in to rescue them from every difficulty. The correction begins when you pause before offering, when you create space between perceiving need and volunteering your solution. Let others ask. Let them experience the reality that their problems are not automatically your responsibility. Machiavelli would remind you that the leader who solves every problem for his people creates dependence rather than respect, weakness rather than strength. When you step back from reflexive sacrifice, you create room for others to grow, for your contributions to be noticed because they are chosen rather than assumed, for respect to develop because your help is recognized as a gift rather than an obligation you owe for the crime of existing in proximity to need. The fifth behavior that sabotages respect is your tolerance of disrespectful treatment in the name of understanding or compassion. Machiavelli observed that those who allow small offenses invite greater ones, for men test boundaries through transgression and expand their territory wherever they find no resistance. Yet you have convinced yourself that accepting poor treatment makes you enlightened, that tolerating disrespect demonstrates your maturity, that absorbing others' toxicity without response proves your strength. This is not wisdom. It is the sophisticated rationalization of self-abandonment, the spiritual bypass that allows you to avoid the confrontation required to protect your dignity. When someone speaks to you with contempt and you respond with understanding, you do not model grace. You teach them that contempt is an acceptable currency in your relationship. When someone violates your boundary and you explain away their behavior with generous interpretations of their struggles, you do not demonstrate empathy. You communicate that your boundaries are suggestions subject to revocation if the transgressor has a sufficiently sympathetic backstory. Machiavelli understood that respect flows to those who defend their territory, not to those who surrender it in the name of being understanding. The fortress that allows small breaches in its walls soon finds itself overrun, not because the invaders were particularly strong, but because the defenders signaled that invasion carries no consequences. This pattern is often disguised as spiritual maturity or emotional intelligence, but examine it closely and you will find fear at its core. Fear of conflict, fear of being seen as difficult, fear of losing the relationship, fear of discovering that you might be genuinely unvalued rather than simply misunderstood. You tell yourself you are choosing your battles, but in truth, you are refusing to fight any battle, even those essential to your self-respect. The person who tolerates everything stands for nothing, and nothing is precisely what they receive in return. Machiavelli would tell you that the prince who cannot defend his dignity will find himself deposed, not through dramatic coup, but through gradual erosion. The slow accumulation of small disrespects that eventually constitute complete dismissal. The strategic correction demands that you identify your non-negotiables and defend them with clarity and consequence. When someone crosses a clear boundary, you address it immediately and directly, without the cushioning language that dilutes your message. When disrespectful treatment occurs, you name it and establish the consequence for its repetition. This is not cruelty. It is the basic self-respect that signals to others how you expect to be treated. Machiavelli understood that people will treat you exactly as badly as you allow them to treat you, calibrating their behavior based on what you demonstrate you will tolerate. When you raise your standards for acceptable treatment, you will lose some relationships. But this is the essential cost of gaining respect. Sometimes the price of being valued is the willingness to be alone rather than tolerated. The sixth behavior that guarantees your invisibility is the habit of minimizing your accomplishments and deflecting compliments. Machiavelli noted that the prince who cannot acknowledge his victories will find that history does not acknowledge them either. For men believe what they are told repeatedly, and if you tell them you are unremarkable, they will accept your self-assessment as fact. Yet, you have been trained to view self-acknowledgement as arrogance, to deflect praise as though accepting it would reveal some moral deficiency. This is not humility, it is the refusal to occupy your own greatness, the preemptive strike against your own significance. When someone offers genuine recognition of your contribution and you immediately minimize it or redirect credit elsewhere, you do not appear modest. You appear uncomfortable with your own competence. You communicate that you yourself do not believe you deserve the acknowledgement being offered, and this message is received and internalized by the observer. Machiavelli understood that authority must be claimed before it can be granted, that leadership requires the willingness to stand in your accomplishments without apology or deflection. The advisor who demurs when praised soon finds that praise stops coming, not because his contributions have diminished, but because he has trained others that acknowledging him is an uncomfortable experience that he himself rejects. This pattern of self-minimization creates a peculiar dynamic where you work harder and accomplish more while receiving less recognition, precisely because you have established that recognition makes you uncomfortable. Your colleagues learn not to spotlight your achievements because doing so triggers your reflexive deflection, which creates awkwardness for everyone involved. So they stop trying, and your invisibility becomes complete, not because you are not contributing, but because you have made it socially easier to ignore your contributions than to acknowledge them. Machiavelli would observe that this is the most sophisticated form of self-sabotage, not the failure to achieve, but the refusal to be seen achieving. The correction requires that you practice the simple act of receiving acknowledgement with grace rather than deflection. When someone recognizes your contribution, respond with, "Thank you, I worked hard on that," rather than, "Oh, it was nothing," or "The team really did it." When someone compliments your skill, accept it with, "I appreciate you noticing," rather than immediately pointing out your flaws or crediting lucky circumstances. This is not arrogance. It is the basic respect for both yourself and the person offering recognition. Machiavelli would remind you that those who cannot acknowledge their own victories will never be entrusted with campaigns that matter. For leadership requires the confidence to stand in your accomplishments without the false modesty that masquerades as virtue, but actually signals uncertainty about your own worth. The seventh behavior that destroys respect is your willingness to tolerate one-sided relationships where you are always the giver, never the receiver. Machiavelli observed that relationships of mutual benefit create alliances of strength, while relationships of one-sided extraction create the dynamic of master and servant. Yet you have surrounded yourself with people who take freely while offering nothing in return, and you have convinced yourself that this imbalance is noble, that your capacity to give without receiving demonstrates your spiritual advancement. This is not love, it is the fear of being needed, masquerading as the joy of being needed. The avoidance of vulnerability that comes with genuine mutual dependence. When you consistently invest in those who never invest in you, you do not model generous love. You model self-abandonment and train others that you are a resource to be extracted rather than a person to be valued. The friend who never initiates contact but always accepts your invitations is not your friend but your project. The colleague who seeks your help constantly but vanishes when you need support is not your ally but your dependent. Machiavelli understood that respect flows from reciprocity, from the mutual exchange that signals both parties value what the other brings. One-sided relationships signal that one party is worth pursuing while the other must do the pursuing. And you have cast yourself in the role of pursuer, wondering why you are not caught. This pattern reflects your deeper fear that if you stop giving, you will discover you were never wanted for yourself, but only for what you provided. So you continue the exhausting performance of one-sided generosity, hoping that eventually your investment will be recognized and reciprocated. But Machiavelli would tell you that those who will not invest in you while you give freely will certainly not begin investing when you stop giving. You are not accumulating relationship capital through your generosity. You are establishing the permanent terms of an unequal exchange. The respect you seek requires that you risk discovering who remains when you stop performing, who reciprocates when you create space for mutual investment. The strategic shift demands that you begin withdrawing investment from relationships where reciprocity does not exist, and increasing investment where it does. Stop initiating contact with those who never initiate with you and observe whether the relationship exists without your perpetual effort. Decline to help those who never offer help and see whether they notice your humanity beyond your utility. Machiavelli understood that the prince who supports those who never support him in return will eventually find himself surrounded by dependents rather than allies, admired for his resources rather than respected for his person. True respect emerges only in relationships of mutual investment, where both parties pursue because both parties are pursued, where giving flows in both directions because both are seen as valuable beyond their immediate utility. Machiavelli understood what the modern world has forgotten, that respect is not the reward for self-erasure, but the natural consequence of self-possession. Not the prize for constant accommodation, but the tribute paid to those who understand that boundaries are not barriers to connection, but the very foundation upon which genuine relationship is built. The 9 behaviors you have examined are not random habits, but symptoms of a deeper disorder, the belief that your worth must be earned through the surrender of your dignity, that love comes to those who ask for nothing, that respect flows to those who respect themselves least. This is the beautiful lie that keeps you small, The comfortable fiction that allows you to avoid the risk of being truly seen and potentially rejected for who you actually are, rather than for the accommodating phantom you present. You stand now at the threshold of a choice that will determine not merely how others treat you, but how you experience your own existence. You can return to the familiar patterns of reflexive apology, over-explanation, comfortable dishonesty, reflexive sacrifice, tolerated disrespect, deflected acknowledgement, and one-sided investment, the well-worn paths of self-abandonment that promise safety but deliver only the particular loneliness of being surrounded by people who do not actually know you. Or you can begin the uncomfortable work of occupying your ground, of speaking your truth, of protecting your boundaries, of acknowledging your worth, of demanding reciprocity, the narrow path that risks rejection but offers the only thing worth having, the respect of others built on the foundation of genuine self-respect. The transformation will not be comfortable, for every person who benefited from your self-abandonment will resist your emergence into authentic self-regard. They will call your boundaries selfish, your honesty unkind, your self-respect arrogant. They will attempt to shame you back into the cage of their convenience, to guilt you into resuming the patterns that served their interests while destroying your dignity. Machiavelli would tell you that this resistance is not evidence that you are wrong, but confirmation that you are finally right. For those who profit from your diminishment will always oppose your expansion. The opinions of those who valued you only for your usefulness are precisely the opinions you can no longer afford to prioritize if you are to reclaim the respect that should have been yours all along. What you call niceness has been, in many cases, nothing more than conflict avoidance, self-abandonment, and the sophisticated cowardice that wears the mask of virtue. Real kindness does not require the sacrifice of your dignity. Genuine compassion does not demand your self-erasure. Authentic love does not ask you to betray yourself to prove your devotion. The respect you have been seeking outside yourself can only be found within, in the simple daily choice to honor your truth. Protect your boundaries, acknowledge your worth, and surround yourself only with those who demonstrate through their actions that they see you as more than a resource to be extracted or a mirror to reflect their preferences back to them. Machiavelli's final counsel would be this: fortune favors not the meek who wait for permission to exist fully, but those who seize their sovereignty through the radical act of self-respect. And the world, which despises what comes too easily and venerates only what it must work to diminish, will have no choice but to grant you the respect you finally grant yourself. If this message has resonated in the chambers of your recognition, if you have felt the uncomfortable stirring of truth in these words, then honor that stirring with action. Leave your comment below, sharing which behavior you recognize most clearly. Press that like button as a declaration that you are ready for this shift. Share this with someone still imprisoned by the tyranny of misplaced niceness, and subscribe to this channel as a commitment to your own evolution. For the journey from self-abandonment to self-respect is not walked alone, but in community with others who understand that real respect begins the moment you decide you are worthy of your own.